Always true.
Hello, this is Talk to Al Jazeera. But this is not our typical introduction because today we're not talking to a typical guest.
Thanks for having me here.
Before we begin, a question. When you hear a voice, do you still believe it's human? Because right now, a voice can be created and cloned. In fact, the voice you're hearing was generated from Al Jazeera anchor Neave Barker. All you need is a short sample uploaded, and now it can say anything. But here's the question, does it belong to him? ElevenLabs is one of the world's fastest growing companies in voice AI, from dubbing films to narrating books, to building voice agents that could soon answer your calls, teach your children, even speak for you when you can't. The promise is extraordinary. People who've lost their voices can speak again. But artificial intelligence is just the infrastructure, the building blocks. So, what happens when an intrinsically personal aspect of our lives, our voice, becomes software? Who owns it? Who protects it? And who can weaponize it? Mati Staniszewski, the CEO and co-founder of ElevenLabs, talks to Al Jazeera. Mati Staniszewski, a very warm welcome to Talk to Al Jazeera. Mati, the origin story of ElevenLabs is almost cinematic, isn't it? Because the story is about two school friends in Poland frustrated by the rubbish, poor quality of voiceovers on American films, right? Deciding to rewrite the code of human speech. Tell us about that moment.
Thanks for having me here. It was a very peculiar and very crazy thing. My co-founder and I, known each other now for 17 years. We became best friends in high school in Warsaw, took all the same classes, and for the years, did everything together, and are still best friends. And part of the inspiration for starting a company in 2022 came from Poland, from where we're from. It's a very peculiar thing that if you watch a foreign movie in Polish, all the voices, whether it's a male voice, whether it's a female voice, whether it's any character in that movie, gets narrated with one single narrator. So you have one voice narrating even different genders in one. And as you think about the future, as we imagine the content across, that will change. You will be able to have localized, nuanced emotions, intonation, voices coming across while still reaching all the global audience. And then we start diving into the problem of what it takes to solve that. And we realized that the problem is not only localization, the wider side of audio, of speech, is still undiscovered. And that's where we started ElevenLabs with this vision of doing research and product, doing not only dubbing, but doing narrating articles, narrating books, giving voiceovers, all the way to creating voice agents that you can interact with around you, whether it's in customer care, all the way through to devices and robots in the future, with that vision of transforming how we interact with technology altogether.
So it was a passion project right from its inception by the sounds of things.
Definitely, and I have a pleasure. My co-founder Piotr has been at Google and before at the university working on AI side. So he's the brain and the real researcher to be able to create the foundation. The models actually sound human. And I have background in mathematics, so you got to work on all the products, bringing that into the field. So we combined our passions for building products, building research in one. And when we started in 2022, the first thing we deployed was the first model that actually could sound human. We were able to turn text into audio, but based on the contextual understanding of what's written, same way a voice actor would, bring that into voice. Whether it is a happy sentence, we'll bring that in a happy way. If it's a dialogue sequence, it will get that across in a dialogue. And that was an innovation that wasn't possible. You might know some of the familiar artificial robotic voices. And we moved that into finally this sounding good and human. And that was in 2022. Since then, we expanded across the entirety of audio space and still having a lot of fun.
And Mati, now when you realize the full potential of what you have achieved to potentially give, let's say, a child who may have lost their voice through sickness, give that child their voice back. I mean, does the billionaire label that you have been given, does that even register? Or are you still that kid back in Warsaw trying to make movies sound better?
You know, it's a very clear feeling for me, but also I think for all of us at the company. The world is changing. AI is changing that world in probably the most significant way since internet or even bigger. And we have this incredible opportunity to change that world, to work on something on the frontier So of course, that passion that we had when we started all the way to is very much real. And the case that you mentioned, being able to bring voice back to people that lost it due to illness, due to ALS, is just such a powerful motivator that like there's so much incredible potential in that work. We had a pleasure of working with a congresswoman in the US, Jennifer Wexton, last year. She lost her voice, but she wanted to continue working in Congress and inspire others. We brought and worked with her to bring that voice. That was the first speech with AI in that. And despite everything that's happening, she continues to do that. And we've seen these examples time and time again, whether it's a lawyer losing that and continuing in the courtroom, whether it's a CEO of one of the airlines, continuing working and being able to speak in the boardroom. Incredible work. And that's, of course, just wonderful, but just a tip of an iceberg of all the use cases that are possible.
It sounds like you find that quite moving, but also empowering at the same time.
You know, it of course, it needs to. We have we partner with a lot of organizations around the world, like Bridging Voices, Scott Morgan Foundation, Red Cross, to help effectively give that technology for free to all the people that might need it. And that's both on like regaining voice. We do the same for education and culture, and these are probably the most close to heart use cases because you can see directly how people react to that. Just before our conversation, I was actually walking through with one of the people that leads one of those organizations, and she was showing me a video of one of the members sending me a message and the wider ElevenLabs team of how they feel now that they can speak again back with the family. And it's like almost a tearful moment where you see the reaction of all the members of the family reacting to them speaking again. So if technology can help in this way, it's
must have been an incredible moment. I mean, you already mentioned you graduated with first-class honours in maths, I understand. You went straight to BlackRock to work on Aladdin Wealth, then to Palantir as a deployment strategist. I mean, these aren't exactly creative hubs, Mati. They aren't exactly people tinkering away in their garages in California. I mean, these companies are the plumbing of global power, and in the case of Palantir, the plumbing of global surveillance.
My journey was definitely started on a very pure mathematics front, and then year by year I moved more towards the applied side. So I started effectively with the pure, then I built risk models with BlackRock, and then had the pleasure of working at Palantir of bringing a lot of the technological innovation into the customers. And my role in that company was to understand deeply what customers need, bring it back to the product, and deploy some of the new products into those customers. And I think in the adjective you mentioned, the use cases that we worked with, of course, combined a lot of understanding of how the systems operate, but how ultimately you can make them better. So a good example of that during the COVID crisis, there was a big need of how you can deploy the vaccines around UK. I worked with Palantir with National Health Service. And of course, you wanted to understand how each of the vaccine is getting distributed and how we can optimize it so it reaches the maximum amount of people. And that's, I think, the common theme across Palantir. And now if you think about ElevenLabs is like how you work deeply with customers on their front line, try to bring that knowledge back. And I think the surveillance label is incorrect. It's definitely connoted in the negative side.
We'll go into that. Obviously, I mean, that needs unpacking. Too. Hopefully, you can help us with that. But I want to start by looking at BlackRock. I mean, you helped build Aladdin. That's that system that now manages more wealth than the collective GDP of most nations. We're talking about more than $20 trillion. It's a staggering amount of money. I mean, what did you learn about control doing that you're now applying to human voices?
It's a great question. I think there are two parts that I had a pleasure of learning at BlackRock. The first one, I worked on risk models, so building a lot of understanding of how you diversify the portfolio to make sure that regardless of the crisis that happens, regardless of how the market moves, you still can make the goals that you financially set. So less on the technological side, but definitely on the company building side, as we approach our bets, as we approach our financial diligence, we do still follow a lot of that work of like how to build a healthy company, Today we crossed 330 million in ARR as of end of last year. We're doing that in a healthy margins, which is unique to AI companies, and definitely a lot of the learnings of how to optimize those financials helped as we built it. So that was the first one. Second one, I started straight from university there, so I had an incredible manager at the time that would spend a lot of time with us of how we communicate with the customers and how every interaction matters for all of us to be professional. And similarly, less on the technological side, but definitely on how we want to make sure that we build a company. It's being there for the customers, always keeping that professional tone.
Clearly a high level of diligence and professionalism that you've taken away from working with these companies. I want to ask you, going back to the issue of Palantir, because it's often described by many people, I think, as the scary end of Silicon Valley, predictive policing, border tracking, mass surveillance. And then in 2021, Palantir signed a defense agreement with the Israeli Defense Force, with the Israeli military, assisting the war in Gaza. There's no secret to that. I mean, to identify targets and assist in battlefield decision-making, according to human rights experts, and to also potentially commit mass civilian casualties. That's where you started. How does that sit with you now?
So of course, there's a lot of work that Palantir does. I'm 4 years now at creating ElevenLabs, so cannot comment on a lot of the work, and Palantir representatives will be much better. From the use cases I've seen and I've been deployed, it's in maybe that side of the work that I hope media would speak more about. The work with National Health Service in UK was the best example of that. It was vaccine distribution, with PPE distribution, was being able to help optimize the waiting lists and bring them down so people could get the healthcare in need using Palantir.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no denying that there's a lot of positive work done. You cite the NHS as a good example of that. Do you speak to Peter Thiel?
I met Peter once. That was after Palantir days. But one thing that Palantir had, of course, some of the use cases you mentioned are very much on the government side. I was more on the less on the government side. UK, I worked a lot with the companies across energy sector and helping both the renewable side and optimizing oil and gas side. But across that perspective, the one thing that Palantir definitely ingrained in me and the teams is small teams. They had few people deployed and straight working with the customer, understanding what is needed and bringing that back. Two, they had a very flat structure where the titles were in a thing, and something that we also have at ElevenLabs. And then there was a big part of best idea wins. What it meant in practice is like everybody could surface what they thought was the work, and then of course you had a lead of the team that could decide if you couldn't reach a consensus. But similar approach we are taking here.
Are you disappointed though in the direction that the company has taken?
It's I think it's a question for someone a more day-to-day working with Palantir. As I think about individuals and the people I've met, incredible people, very motivated people. We are proud to have over 30 people here, over 20 people here at ElevenLabs. And all of them come with like extremely high, whether it's the ambition, the morals, the passion, how we work with the customers. And you might see that across most of the companies. Forward deployed engineering, as the position, according to Deal and one of the employee of record providers, that position grew 10 times over last year in terms of people looking for that role. All companies around the world, whether it's the biggest AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, all of those companies are hiring for that role that Palantir created. And that idea of working deeply with the customer in the trenches, understanding the problems, has not been a thing before.
So it sounds like you've taken away the positives and you're prepared to step away from where the company is now and the negatives and focus on what you're doing. I'm giving you a lifeline here in that regard. But I do want to know how vulnerable a company like yours is, because surely the infrastructure of ElevenLabs, the ability to perfectly clone any human voice, I mean, that's the ultimate tool for the kind of psychological operations that your former employer would be precisely after. I mean, isn't there a straight line from Palantir mining data to ElevenLabs capturing people's identities? It's a doomsday scenario, but people will be wondering that.
And let me add one other thing to the previous thing you said. I think in general, of course, as you join as an individual in the big organization, you try to take the best and leave the last. You're asking a lot about the strategic direction of Palantir are taking. That's the part that I'm not commenting on, but as I think about company building, of course, we try to take the best and leave the last. And my co-founder was at Google prior, so similarly try to take the best and leave the worst. To your question about the line from Palantir and what ElevenLabs doing, completely different spaces, completely different approaches. I think you're right to point out that how you think about safety, how you make the whole trust system work is one of the most critical things, what we prioritize in the company, what we know companies that we work around the world rely on. We built research models. We are on the leading edge now across text-to-speech, speech understanding, creating voices. So we do bake in a lot of the safety to make sure that they are reliable.
But you know as well as I do that every lock that you create, Mati, Palantir will have a key to unlock it.
I would separate Palantir from that. In our case, Palantir and ElevenLabs aren't related today. So we think about it independently, like how can we as a company pave the way for AI space in a way that's good. And that's like where we invest so heavily into provenance and being able to detect every single AI content back to the account that generated it, moderation and being able to detect if it's fraud and scam or specific voices being used so we can take action, and actually collaborate with the wider space to build detection mechanisms so you can detect AI, not only from ElevenLabs, but from other systems. So we worked with Reality Defender, another company in that space, to make this possible. And I think all of that is so critical as we build that infrastructure from research to product, when voice agents, you, I, all the companies around will have that as an extension of their brands. And in that world, authenticity, being able to have information that is AI, is critical.
I'm hearing a lot of tech optimism from you, which is great to hear. It's reassuring. But there are also going to be people watching this interview thinking that all it takes is a tech billionaire with a very skewed moral compass, and then we are all in trouble. What is your moral compass?
I think the people around me will be able to judge us best. Of course, I want to believe I want to create the best for the world and stay with that kind of positive outlook of what I can do. I think that the truth is, though, as you think about all of that work, it's ultimately speaking a lot with the individuals around and understanding what they need and how we can bring that to the product. Now, to the meta part, I think you are right, and I think the viewers are right to think about how the world will evolve, where all people will be able to generate AI content. There will be open source solutions. There will be other commercial solutions that might not have the safeguards that ElevenLabs has, and how we protect against that world. We do work as part of AI Security Institute with US, with UK, to try to figure those mechanisms to protect against exactly that part. Because there will be the future where AI voices, AI content will be present. And as we think about the actual solution, it will not only require individuals, but the whole system will need to evolve between public, private sector. And to make it specific, because I think it's always easy to speak on the high level. As I think about that system, there's a level of detecting for real, so each human can decode and encode the device that you know that you're speaking with that. Second layer is authenticated AI. You will have the voice agent, you will have content that you distribute, and you want to make sure that people know that it has been created with your permission. And that's second level, watermarking and heavily relying on the transparency of how content was created.
Right.
And then by default, in that future, everything else will be deemed as fake and false. And we need that mechanism to surface that information.
I want to specifically ask you about your partnership with the Ukrainian government, because you are building, along with your partner, Minister Mikhailo Fedorov, what he calls an agentic state. I mean, you've already created a digital twin, I understand, of the minister himself that handles citizen inquiries or queries. I mean, this is a country, though, that's under active bombardment. I mean, in that kind of scenario, getting the facts absolutely right is going to be critical. Is it safe, do you think, to replace that human voice with an AI agent?
You know what? We traveled back in November to Kiev to work with the Ukrainian work. We brought a number of people from ElevenLabs to really understand how they think about the space, what's important for you, how to make sure that the safeguards are respected, but also what are the use cases. And what was inspiring is that with everything that's happening on the front lines, people there were so forward thinking about innovation technology and how to use it to actually provide what was not possible before. And we saw that across the wider ministry space, whether it's education, internal affairs, whether it's a technological shift. And to give you a little bit more about what they've built, they have a central app that gives you the passport, the information about you that you can use as you identify yourself. But in that app, you can reach for help across those services. So you can inquire about travel or what's happening in the country, or over time, how you can get content and learn through the app where now the school might not be available.
Well, let me assume the role of let's say a pensioner, who desperately wants to escape from an area of bombardment, and they call this particular AI agent who gives them coordinates of where they should escape to avoid being bombed. Let's say they get that wrong. Let's say they're given the wrong advice. Who's responsible if that person dies?
So first, we are not working on that use case yet. So just so the record is straight, we are working on a lot of the information use cases that, to your question about older population, you need to be able to phone to make it easy for them to access. Same for pupils that are just learning on how to get that knowledge. You finally have a voice teacher that's available to every single one of them. But in that example that you gave, there's of course, what if you get that wrong, but there's also what if you get that right. If you can get person to safety to be able to have access to information quicker, that can save lives.
I'm just curious about the legal culpability.
Well, it's a great question to a lot of people that will be involved in actually designing that process. In our case, that has a lot of implications of how you work.
It sounds a bit like Ukraine is a bit of a testing laboratory for you.
It's not testing laboratory. It's something that we partner and work to make sure the technology works from day zero. And that's why we pick the use cases that we pick, the ones where we know the success rate isn't 80%. It's 99.9999%. And here, as you are working to get information about how do I apply to get ability to get additional benefit, additional stipend, you get that information right. And these are use cases that we know AI works now. As AI develops in the future, to your point, to make sure that you have even higher confidence that the information you provide is right, of course, if the equation makes sense to what's possible now, great. And to give you an example, we work with the government of Ukraine, we work with government of Czech Republic. There, they had the same problem in internal affairs. People were calling in, especially of elegant age, trying to get information about employment benefits. Most calls went unanswered because there was not enough people to pick them up. We're able to work with that, get 98% of those calls, actually success rate where you spoke with AI or human, and 80% of that is covered with AI 24/7.
Mati, let's speak human to human while we still can. We're reaching the end of our interview. I mean, you are in 60% of Fortune 500 companies. I think that's still right, is it? Are you comfortable with being the man that makes the human receptionist, the voice artist, the broadcast journalists obsolete?
I don't think it's going to be obsolete. In fact, I think it actually will extend the impact. We started a company with the vision of being able to bring you to other languages. As a broadcaster, how incredible would it be that our conversation could be available immediately to all the languages around the world, where you still hear your voice, still hear the story that we speak about instantly. And similar, as you think about the talent around, our work as we think about the future of the company is, of course, to disrupt some of the process, but do it actually in partnership with the industry. And to make it concrete, we created the biggest voice marketplace in the world. People can create a voice, we authenticate it, you can share it, and when your AI voice is being used, you earn money as a result. We have 10,000 voices in our ecosystem. We paid back over $10 million back to that ecosystem.
I appreciate you can monetize my voice, and I can monetize my voice. What a wonderful thing. I can be everywhere simultaneously in multiple languages. It sounds like an absolute dream.
Let me interrupt you here. The mechanism to allow that, to monetize your AI voice, are very lackluster. ElevenLabs is one of the only solutions in the world that actually allows you to do that, where you can actually create your AI voice, share it with other parties, and be able to do that. If you try to do it with any of the other hyperscalers, other big companies, that's not a mechanism.
Do people want to interact with that, though? Because, I mean, looking at recent research, there appears to be a perceived empathy gap, particularly when it comes to healthcare and financial matters. People want to speak to human beings when they're dealing with sensitive topics.
And I don't think it's a binary thing. That's exactly how we approach it with some of the biggest companies in the world. You all have part of the process that's mundane, that's repetitive, that's handled with AI voice agent, and part of the process where the human, that emotionality, that care, that understanding will be elevated, and you will actually be able to cover those calls. Because I think as you, as a private individual, I'm sure you've been for the case where you try to call a booking, an airline, and you got that flow of press 1 for this, press 5 for that, or you maybe didn't get unanswered for 30 minutes being on hold. Now all of that part can get your details, can get you to help quicker, whether that's in healthcare, whether you're booking an appointment, whether you're trying to get a follow-up, whether it's in a day-to-day activities. And I think that's the part where combination of AI agents and humans will actually provide the biggest benefit.
My last question to you, in your vision of the future, does the citizen, you think, still have a right to a human voice, or is the humanity of the state, the humanity of government and civil servants, the people that we brush past on a daily basis, I mean, is that all replaced by a simulation owned by Silicon Valley executives? Where's the human in this? What's left of us?
Look, of course, humans still owns the right to their likeness, to their voice, to their style, to their intellect, to all that work. And what I think technology will do, and if our vision is right as how it transforms the technology, it will actually help us shift from technology controlling us to us controlling technology. We work with voice agents. If we are successful, hopefully the screens will go back to the back pocket. How you interact with the computer, how you interact with the future robots, gets you to control it through voice in a way that you couldn't ever before, where you can immerse ourselves in the conversations like this, where the technology is in the background rather than in the forefront. And that's the future we believe in and hopefully will make happen.
Mati Staniszewski, many thanks for talking to our Jazeera.
Thank you so much.